Scout, thank you so much for joining us in the War Room. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. Got a good night's sleep. Feeling rested. Just pretty great. What about you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. So what you're saying is you are, well rested. You are set for this interview. You are prepared. You're ready to dive deep into the nitty gritty of your cards career. Is that what you're saying?
I don't think I've ever been prepared for a damn thing in my life.
Perfect. That means this interview is going to go swimmingly. Look, you're one of the OG card streamers. You've come, you've gone, you've come back. Like I'm excited to dive into some of the details of that. But before we get there, there are newer players who aren't familiar with exactly who you are. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am Scout on Twitch, Scout Shout. But also my real name is Trevor. A lot of people know that. It's pretty cool. I've been around in cards since the early alpha days. I think I want to say like September of 2019, so pretty early on for cards. I was one of the first streamers, definitely the longest running streamer, as far as like just total time. And done a little casting here and there, casted both world championships, few OCCCs, some other events too here and there. And yeah, just a whole bunch, a lot of card stuff in general I've been a part of.
Very nice. So what got you involved in cards to begin with? You said you picked up the game in, was it alpha at the time?
Yeah, it was alpha at the time. It was, I think, around maybe the later half of alpha was when I got in. But actually, one of my friends saw a Facebook ad for this game, and he was like, "Hey, I know you're a nerd that likes World War II stuff. Here, check this out." And I'm like, "Oh, cool!" And then just kind of went from there. I did a lot of theory crafting early on in the early alpha days. A lot of people may remember Gearbot. He was kind of my go-to partner back then, and he went on to become the first world champion. So that was pretty cool.
So it was literally a Facebook ad, and the fact that you were into World War II stuff that brought you into the game.
Yeah, sure. Sometimes it's just that simple.
That's awesome. Were you big into card games before that? Had you played other card games, or was it really this your first foray into the genre?
Honestly, not a big card game guy, really. I
Right.
dabbled a little bit in Shadowverse when that like came out. Didn't stick around too long with it. Thought it was okay, but that's kind of the only card game experience I've had before this. It's really the World War II aspect that keeps me around.
And what kind of piqued your interest in, the World War II history? Was there anything specific around it that then you kind of transitioned into cards, or how did that kind of come up?
Well, the World War II fascination came from me being a little tiny baby scout, sitting with my dad watching the History Channel all day.
Some
And just, from there, I get my first computer game, World of Tanks, and then a bunch of other World War II games. Then eventually just kind of landed here. And
That's that's awesome. So it's actually so funny because I did an interview with Darkness a couple weeks ago at this point, but he was saying how he got into cards because his background was, playing video games with his father. So I think it's so interesting that just the tie-ins around, some of the, like you said, the beginnings of you as a person and just hanging around with family or your father or whatever and watching the History Channel. So that's awesome that, years later that has transitioned into you playing this game. So you mentioned you got involved with it. What made you take that move from playing the game to actually streaming the game?
uh, well, I'd kind of been like getting into streaming on my own a little bit, kind of as a hobby. So I'd been streaming other games beforehand, but cards, uh, cards just kind of stuck, and I wanted to keep doing it. There was a lot of motivation from the community and the devs specifically, because sometimes they would come into my chat,
Mhm.
and at the time when you're just a little dude with like maybe 10 viewers, it's that's a lot of really exciting motivation to have the dev of the game that you're playing come in and say hi, and you're like, oh wow, this is so cool. This is it. I don't know. It's just really fun.
Awesome. So, obviously you mentioned making that kind of transition to streaming cards. What games were you streaming before that? Was it just kind of a mix of different things, or was there something specific you were streaming before?
Nothing real specific, just kind of jumping around what I felt like playing with my friends that day, no specific genre or anything, just all over the place.
So now you've mentioned the name Scout quite a few times. Where I always ask people this because I think the stories are so interesting. Where did you get the name from?
Um, I get it from my World of Tanks days, actually.
Okay.
Uh, Back in World of Tanks, I actually started playing that game in 2011, so right when that game first came around, and I'm sure a lot of people know that game's been around forever by now, but I had a strong fascination with light tanks in that game. Like that
Okay.
was my bread and butter, the scout tanks. And I just named myself after that because I love the light tanks and I got pretty good at them. There was actually one point where I was one of the top 10 light tank drivers in North America in that game, and that was
No
pretty
way.
cool. Yeah.
So were you heavy kind of onto the competitive side of things when it came to World of Tanks, or was that just kind of fell into it just through playing the game?
Uh, yeah. After a while of playing World of Tanks, I definitely started doing a lot of tournaments for it, and I actually ran one of my own teams for it, and that kind of went on for a couple of years. I had a lot of fun doing that.
Awesome. So from that competitive side of World of Tanks, did that transition much onto the card side? Like you mentioned, you kind of did some casting and things like that. Did you ever play heavily on the tournament side of things within cards?
Honestly, the competitive side of cards hasn't really been a huge interest of mine. I think that's because cards I really want to use it as like a nice casual outlet,
Mhm.
kind of separate from the competitive side of things. And I don't know, it's a nice way to chill out and like have fun and test all the funky interactions in this game and kind of I save the competitiveness for other things.
That's totally fair. Everybody needs a minute to come down, and not everything needs to be about, yeah, that tournament scene or competing all the time. So you went from, playing in, let's say, alpha, you went over to streaming it, then you kind of jumped into casting as well. What attracted you to the casting side of cards?
Honestly, I hadn't considered it at all
Okay.
until one day, Cybernetic, which was the co-host of the first World Championship, he just came to me saying, "Yo, hey, I talked to the 1939 devs and asked if they wanted community casters for the World Championship." And he's like, "I thought you would be a good fit." And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, why not? I'll give it a go, see what happens." And that was kind of my first time casting was the World Championships, and it just kind of went from there.
That's too funny. So how have you enjoyed it? Did you, I know you kind of just threw your arms up and said, "Hey, let's go." Even at the beginning of this interview, you said, "You know what? I'm not prepared for a lot of things in life, but we make do, we do the best we can." So, coming out of that first experience, were you now bought into it saying, "Hey, I want to do more of this. I'm really enjoying it." Were you just kind of, open to doing it again if it came up? What were your feelings like getting through that first event?
I thought it was a great experience. It's something I'd never done before, kind of really putting my face out there
Mhm.
and just kind of goofing off, being me during the whole time. Just I don't know, it's really fun. I like throwing my personality out there. It can maybe be a little bombastic, a little eccentric, excuse me, eccentric at times, but it makes for a good show sometimes, I'd like to think.
So, you talked about different games, talked about World of Tanks, and now we're talking about a card game where, it's one-on-one, it's turn-based. It can be a bit slow sometimes. Do you think that having that personality and being able to, kind of fill some of that dead time and put your personality out there, do you think that plays into, casting a game like cards or other CCGs that are a little bit on the slower side sometimes?
Yeah, I would say so, especially if I have like somebody to kind of riff off of as well.
Mhm.
I really like really trying to like coming up with those kind of like, witty quips and responses to whatever someone next to me might be saying, or just having a big knee jerk jolt reaction to anything that might happen on the screen, crack a few jokes when I can, just keep it super chill, super casual, just try to make sure everybody's having a good time.
Love it. So, you did a whole lot of cards content, whether that was streaming, casting, and all that, and then you took a little bit of a break in between. What kind of caused that break, or what made you decide to take some time away from the game? Was it just life getting busy? Was there something specific tied to it?
My first big break from cards, it was honestly it was burnout. Like I kind of pushed myself a lot. I had a talk with the devs. I was like, hey, I love you guys in the game and everything, but I just need to step away for a little while. I think I burned myself out. There were days where like every day of the week I would be streaming for 12 hours, and that's too
Wild.
much. That's way too much. And I pace myself a lot more these days. And it went so far as to where my original Twitch name used to be Scout Card, but I made the choice when I made that break to change it to Scout Shout to kind of not like separate myself from cards so much as just kind of not be tied completely to cards and just kind of be my own thing,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
No, totally. You mentioned burnout, and that comes up, quite often when it comes to streamers and Twitch, or even competitive players who are jamming hundreds of games on ladder, let's say. What made you realize that, what, I need to take a minute, I need to step away? Was there something specific that kind of you caught on to and decided, all right, now's the time I'm going to step back?
Just I don't know if it's anything specific. It's just your brain gets tired of it. You get bored. It's not even just cards specifically. Anything that you
Mhm.
just do a bunch of way too much. It's like I've had it with plenty of other games in the past. Just kind of you get that like little addiction to it, and you just want to keep doing it. And then all of a sudden, one day it just bursts, and you're like, I'm gonna be sick if I see another card. And it led to me getting like really angry at the game a lot too. Like I was at a point where I was actually getting into a lot of arguments in the cards Discord, and I look back on that and I'm like, I'm not proud of it, but I've learned from it, and I try to be better these days.
I think what you're saying is something that a lot of people experience, and good on you for recognizing that and deciding that, hey, you know what, probably what's best is just to take a little bit of time away, recharge, come back in fresh, and feel good in that excitement about the game again. And speaking of coming back, obviously you're back here, you're doing this interview with me, you're stepping back into some of that casting. What made you decide to come back and decided this was the time to do so?
Well, there's actually been two breaks.
Okay.
My second break, I think, is the one you guys are probably more familiar with, and that one was caused by a lot of home life stuff that we don't have to get into. But
Sure.
the reason I'm coming back now is honestly just because I've never wanted to quit cards. Like
Mhm.
that's never been a thought in my head. Like I've always wanted to stick around. I've always gone into the breaks knowing that they were breaks.
Mhm.
And the reason I'm coming back now is just honestly, I'm in a much better position personally, like in my home life. I just moved to a new house, a lot of family dramas behind me, and I can just sit down and focus on the things that I want to focus on and just be happy with myself. And I think that personal life happiness can translate really well into what I'll be bringing as far as like online content is concerned.
Yeah, I definitely think there's always a bleed through that goes in both directions where, like you were saying, that burnout in game can affect your personal life, just like that personal life can go in and affect how you're feeling when you are either streaming or casting or whatever the case may be. But it's great to have you back. And I think it's interesting because you do have such, a long kind of experience in cards. You've been around since just about the beginning to now. Getting involved in the community, the tournament scene, the different events going on, casting, all that. Kind of what have you seen change over time as to where Cards is today versus where it was when you first jumped into it?
That's a good question. I would say definitely in the early days, things like net decking were very much not a thing, really,
Mm.
because the game was so new to everyone there, and there were so few people that everybody was kind of just a pioneer on what worked and what didn't. And I think a lot of those people early on, whether they knew it or not, kind of had a lot of say in where the game would be going in the
Mhm.
future. And I think nowadays the devs definitely have their vision like super ironed out. They know where they want to go. And not saying that players obviously don't have any say in what happens anymore, but it, it's definitely fallen off a lot there. And I don't know. I don't know. The game overall has just gotten a lot better over the years. I think a lot more variety. Way back in the day, there used to be like maybe one deck that was way above everything else, and just I don't know, things were the Wild West back in Alpha.
Well, you mentioned doing a lot of, theory crafting and things like that. And when you're in those alpha stages of the game, and like you said, everybody's kind of a pioneer, that makes a lot of sense because you're just trying to come up with, hey, what's the next best thing? But when it comes to, let's say today, you mentioned that, the meta is a little bit more solidified because you have people net decking and things like that. Do you think there is less room for some of that theory crafting and being a little bit more creative? Or do you think there is more space for it because now you have an opportunity to kind of disrupt what's going on out there currently in a meta that's a little bit more defined?
Hmm.
I mean, the option may also be that you don't care what the meta looks like and you're going to play your fun stuff and it's going to turn out the way it turns out.
I think there's still a lot of room for creativity, and I think like as a new player yourself, you can kind of still go through the game and discover these things
Mhm.
as well. Like you don't necessarily have to be the first person to discover something to feel like you're being creative and finding something really cool. Like you could go in there, not look at anything that's already out there, like a bunch of info and stuff, and just kind of figure stuff out on your own. And I think that's really cool. Find out like like interesting combo decks or cool synergies that may not seem super obvious at first, and you could definitely go in and get that kind of thrill of like just finding it out all on your own.
Absolutely. And I think there continues to be room for that in just about every game if you want to take the time and put it in. And if that's your goal and you want to be creative, you have to take the opportunity to do so. Now, jumping back into the game, you're getting back involved in casting with some of the upcoming events. What are you most looking forward to in general coming back to the game and what you think might come for the rest of this year or even into next year?
Really looking forward to the World Championships again. Those are always really fun. Um, Hoping they bring me back again this year. And the mess hall brawls that you guys have started, those seem like a really fun thing too. Definitely a great opportunity for maybe people like me that aren't super competitive to kind of show off that different side of cards. And I kind of really looking forward to more of those events. And later down the road, mobile release.
But I mean,
Oh,
it's funny because you laugh because it's been talked about for, I don't want to say forever, but it feels like it. But that's, not just from a convenience perspective of the current player base, but that's a huge opportunity to tap into a whole new player base and continue to grow the game because there are people who just, flip through their app store and go, oh, this looks interesting. I like World War II. And next thing you know, you got a whole other group of players out there who wouldn't have been exposed to the game
yeah,
otherwise.
dude. Yeah, I'm gonna make so much money, dude, when they drop mobile. I can't I can't wait. No, but the convenience is also a big part of it for me. There's a lot of times where I'm like, just chilling out somewhere, maybe
Mhm.
even just laying in my bed, wouldn't mind just opening up my phone, playing a game of cards and stuff like that.
Right on. You also mentioned the mess hall brawl before, and I think that that's a nice touch when you're talking about like somebody like yourself who's not super competitive, and obviously the esports tournament scene has been growing, the world championships and all of that. Do you think that, as cards continues to grow, there will and should be more opportunity for, just kind of fun events or special rules events or things like that kind of allow different people to get involved, whether that's through, their personality being out there, creativity, kind of what do you think the future should hold from a content perspective more so than from a competitive perspective?
Hmm. I'm not super sure because it's a card game. I I'm no expert on like game design or anything, and really no expert on like competitive or event organization. And I'm really not sure. This is a tough question. I don't think I'm really super qualified to answer, if that makes
Sure.
sense. Like
Yeah,
just, but
absolutely. So why don't I
yeah.
rephrase that a little bit for you? Would you like more opportunities to do stuff like the mess hall brawl and other events that allow you to kind of again get that personality out there and just have more fun with the game than something that's a super serious, let's say, tournament style just competition?
Yeah, me personally, I definitely like any opportunity where I can throw my face onto something. But
There's
uh,
No, there's nothing wrong with that. So, Scout, I just want to thank you again for taking the time to join us here on the War Room. But before we go, I wanted to give you the opportunity to address the Cards community. If there's anything you want to say to them, anything you want to share with them, now would be a great opportunity to do so. And feel free to also share where we can find you out there.
okay, all you cards people out there, I thank you guys for sticking around. I've got a small little community of my own that's super chill, super laid back, just constant vibes all over the place. That's what I want to see more of. I know this can be a very competitive game at times, but I think it's really good to sit back and just chill out and kind of try to be understanding of other people too. Like you might see somebody get upset. Like occasionally, you'll see people go into the cards Discord, get real mad about something, but that's okay. We're all human. It's gonna happen. All that I ask of the general populace is to not snap back at them. Try to sit back, sympathize a little bit with it. Be like, yeah, man, I get it. That sucks. Or just let people vent. Let people get the frustrations out. There's a lot of times where I'm fucking rambling, but
But I think that's a great message, man. Like, I think that's such a
uh,
great message in any online community to be more understanding. It's really easy to be aggressive behind the keyboard, but I think you hit the nail on the head when it comes down to just,
mhm.
sympathize with people a little bit, understand where
And
they're coming from.
yeah. I think I'm not saying it's necessarily great to start out being aggressive, but I really think you shouldn't respond with
Yeah.
aggressiveness. Like just understand why they might be upset and just let them get it out. Like we've all been angry before. We all get frustrated. Happens to be all the time on stream. Just it it's not permanent. It passes, and just try to understand that from people and don't make a huge deal out of it and just yeah. Yeah.
I love the message, Scout. Where can people find you out in the community if you're not, rambling
Oh,
on in the Cards Discord?
where can they find me? Um Easiest place to find me is twitch.tv/scout shout. That is SCOUTSHOUT. From there, you can find my Discord, which is where we have a really nice community there of super chill cards players and just World War II game players in general. Um, yeah, yeah, it's really the best places to find me, just on Discord, really. Twitch and Discord.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate once again you coming and hanging out, Scout. It has been an absolute pleasure getting to know you a little bit better. So thank you for taking the time and being on the War Room.
Thanks for having me. It's been great being here.